Welcome to the Happy Disruptors podcast. If you're a creative thinker with an unconventional approach to your industry, you just might be a happy disruptor. Join your friends at the Great Outdoors Foundation for honest conversations about tackling critical issues like conservation with an uncritical disposition. If you like to smile and get things done, this is the podcast for you.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Disruptors podcast. I'm Katie, and this is the second installment of a series we're calling the Best of 2025. So the format of today's episode is going to be a little bit different than our traditional episodes here on the Happy Disruptors podcast. Last week, we covered highlights from our expert interviews this year regarding water quality, and today's episode is going to focus all on conservation and agriculture. Now, if you're not already familiar with the Great Outdoors Foundation and our work, we have really stepped into a larger role in participating in advancing water quality efforts through partnering with those in the agriculture sector. That began many years ago, engaging with partners up and downstream, and then really has received a lot of energy and enthusiasm around our Conservation Acceleration Fund. So today we'll have a compilation of conversations with some of the experts in the field working on removing barriers to implementing conservation on private lands. You'll hear from some partners in the ag sector. One of my favorite interviews is actually with two local farmers talking about their perspectives on conservation. And I would just encourage you to be curious as you go into this episode. One thing that we really appreciate about the setting of a podcast episode is it allows us to have just meaningful conversations as we would over a cup of coffee. And we truly believe that it's only through engaging with diverse perspectives that we're able to really understand and grasp and participate in not only the issue, but also a solution. So go ahead and tune in to this week's episode on conservation and agriculture.
So conservation agronomists are relatively new at the co-op level. Can you talk a little bit about why Heartland is investing into conservation agronomists, what you see the benefit or Heartland sees the benefit for its farmers and owners? What's that role?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot. Almost every time I talk with somebody, it inevitably comes up in a conversation, which is, what's in it for Heartland? You asked it much more nicely than that. Thank you. But we get this question a lot, and it's a great question. There's lots of different ways for me to reply. Since this is a very informal conversation, I will just say snarkily that, not to you, but like in general, the answer to that is, I think in the conservation space, ag retailers have traditionally been seen as one of the causes of the water quality problems. And I think that that's a fair criticism. I'll just say this. Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. There's parts of it that aren't necessarily objective, but it can be a fair accusation. So my response to that is, if we're a part of the problem, we definitely deserve a right to be a part of the solution. Mm-hmm. Now, that's my snarky response. But also, 6 years ago, Heartland, so we had a former vice president of our agronomy department whose name is Dave Koppes, and fantastic guy. And he had this dream of moving Heartland in the direction of having agronomists who could specifically provide conservation guidance. So he really saw Heartland getting involved in conservation more than it already was. Now, Heartland was an original founding member of the Ag Clean Water Alliance, which has been around for 25 years now, since the inception of the Gulf Hypoxia Task Force at the federal level, and then since the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. So ACWA is an organization of ag retailers and ag industry that want to work towards improving water quality, et cetera. So Heartland was one of the founding members of that organization, and Dave wanted to up us in the game, right? So in 2020, they put out an advertisement for a conservation agronomist. I saw the job posting, and I thought, I don't know that this co-op, because I had the same misconceptions about co-ops at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, do they know what the word conservation means? I'm going to go to this interview. I'm going to interview with these people, and I want to know. So in my interview, I was like, you guys do realize that there is a little bit of a conflict of interest here, maybe, right? I mean, I'm going to be potentially talking some of your customers into reducing their application of nutrients, or I'm going to be talking them into putting cover crops down or changing their management plan or switching to in-season nutrient application. Like, some of this might be contrary to what your sales agronomists might want to see happening. Isn't that going to be a problem? And they had the best response, which was, it was good enough that I decided to take the job when they offered it to me, even though I asked them that question in my interview, which I thought for sure they'd be like, there's the door, have a nice day, lady. They didn't. Which was, we have customers who are demanding this knowledge. They want to know how to use conservation practices. Our sales agronomists are fantastic at helping them grow the most perfect crop, but it is unrealistic to expect people who spent 4 to 6 years getting a degree in a very specific subset of information around growing crops to then pivot and suddenly start offering guidance in a career field that they know nothing about. And they also have a ton of things to do. So asking them to now do the job of 3 people instead of the job of 2 people, which they're already doing, it's unfair to them. And it has made us realize that our sales agronomists aren't happy trying to do all of this, but our farmers also aren't happy. And we're losing business. We're losing farmer business to the snake oil salesman who will tell them whatever they need to tell them in order to get their business. Even if it means that they only get 75% of that farmer's business, they're getting that farmer's business where they didn't have it before. And then we're losing all of that farmer's business.
Interesting.
Wow.
So I thought that response was pretty compelling. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I took the job. But Heartland is getting into this space because the only way to figure it out is to just dive into the deep end of the pool and swim to the other side. So, I mean, I'm helping them figure it out. We have, I think, figured it out pretty good because I've got a team now of soon to be 5 agronomists who are working with me. And we've expanded into so many different spaces in conservation. I think we really have found a good niche for ag retailers. But the only way to figure it out is to just jump in and figure it out.
Well, I think I'm in a little bit of a lucky position, okay, because I'm not like Nick's dad and uncle who sometimes stay up at night, thinking about the loans.
Right.
But because financially I don't depend on my 80. So I get some rent money from Nick. And so I can experiment. And so I've got I've got 3 acres of prairie strips, which are perennial. I've got 7 acres of perennial crop, so hay and kernza. And I have about 10 acres of CRP of various kinds here and there. And I help finance that with rent money from the row crop acres. So I'm lucky in a way, I'm retired, so I don't depend on that financially. I would say for people like Nick's dad and uncle, it's tough. You have some good years, try to save up. You don't buy new equipment, you buy used equipment and all those things that these guys do. And still the tough years can still be tough. But they do have the federal government backing them up in some ways. So there's ARC PLC, there's federal crop insurance, and more things that Nick can talk about. And then there were some special checks from President Trump the first time around. And, there are a few extra little things that help folks out. And it depends a lot on the price of your land. So if you have family land that's paid for, let's say 1/3 of your land is family land paid for, 1/4, that really helps a lot. And you rent 2,000-3,000 more acres. Well, you got to pay rent for that every year. But if you're renting everything, then that's a really big challenge. So your land price is, and that's tough to make it in a tough year.
Yeah.
Really tough, right? Nick's got some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to kind of unpack there from the operator's side. I mean, Lee is the outlier for most landowners. Most landowners are not near as engaged, and they may like the idea of some of these sustainable things, but when it comes to action, they're probably less engaged and not willing to kind of put some of the effort forth or the financial piece that Lee does. Lee and I split a lot of the costs for some of this stuff, whereas most landowners are kind of like, well, that seems great. I'd like you to do that. but I'm not going to help. There's no cost share,
Yeah.
and I'd still like top dollar for rent and
Right.
all these other things. So it gets to be a pretty good challenge, especially Lee alluded to it. Right now, prices are not great, and sure enough, my seed costs went up this year. My fertilizer costs went up this year. All the input costs that it takes to produce that crop have gone up. And if we're talking about adding these conservation pieces, which are important, it is time, money, and effort that I can't spend on other pieces of the operation. So I have to be very diligent about where do I need to spend my time and my effort so that I'm maximizing my return. What we like to do is we've run a lot of numbers on our farm to say, hey, where are the places that yield where are the places that we consistently have problems, and can we actually take out those parts of the field that maybe aren't yielding as well, they don't return, especially in down years like this. Let's try to simplify some of these fields and make them cleaner, easier to farm by using some of these practices. Okay, can we apply that to say, I may not be able to raise the price per bushel, but I can make myself more efficient, and I can make myself a little bit of money by saving myself time.
Yeah.
So there's components of these conservation pieces that aren't always the dollars and cents. How can we leverage those to make, where I can spend my capital, be it actual financial capital or time or stress level, and kind of put them into the right places there. Because these things don't work in every single field. Like
Right.
there's some places where it's like that just does not work here, and I can't put that square peg into a round hole. But there are other places where it's like this will actually save me time and money by taking it out of production and putting it into
So
conservation.
looking at it as like a net profit as opposed to just yield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I will
Yeah.
give up some bushel production by taking that piece out, but I may save myself time, money, or more importantly right now to me, if I save myself the input money
Right.
and be able to kind of keep my powder dry and put it where I can use it more effectively, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
There is a fairly well-known commentator who says, rip out the yield monitor and put in a profit monitor, which makes, that's apocryphal, but it makes sense.
You have mentioned this whole system. I'm going off script a little bit, but I want to dig into this. You've got CoBank at the lending position. You've got co-ops in sort of this middle position. They're providing services to individual farmers. And then you have the individuals, farmers, landowners, those who are making decisions about what they're implementing on the land. How have you seen the system and the delivery of conservation change, and what opportunities do you see there, just as the need for conservation at scale and pace becomes more and more prescient?
Yeah, that's a good summary of the farm credit system. Nice job. Yeah, I would have to think that there's a role for finance here. I think we saw the government play an outsized role for a lot of years in the form of grants to create innovation and I guess momentum in the sustainability space, and I think that's fantastic. There is a role for government. I believe there's a role for government in the future as well. But as the current administration, we've retrenched a little bit, and I'm actually okay with that as well. We have a lot of debt in America, and as a taxpayer, I think the accountability of the area needs to be more than it was, and I think they have taken. Actually, I guess it just created an opportunity for the private sector to step up, and I'm seeing an outsized response from those organizations as well. So, and with ag, having probably just as much challenges on the emission side, but also a lot of opportunities for better health, better opportunities for sequestration with cover crop, no-till, that type of stuff. A lot in the dairy industry for different innovative ways to do manure management and feed additives and those types of things. So a ton of opportunities, ton of challenges, but I think it's coming together nicely in the world of private sector replacing a little bit of the void that the public sector has left.
So when you talk about this, let's get into, maybe one of the solutions that CoBank has come up with, one of your tools in your portfolio that helps to address maybe, the pullback from federal, but how do we make this a system-wide approach while changing the bottom line of conservation and making it part of the business model. Do you want to talk a little bit about the project, the sustainability linked loan that CoBank did with Heartland Co-op?
Yeah, about just over a little less than a year ago, we closed a sustainability linked loan with Heartland Co-op. For those that don't know what that is, that's a loan that has KPIs, key performance indicators, that upon achieving those, there's an eligibility for a rate discount on the loan on a go-forward basis. It's all principle-based, very common in the marketplace, and again, it kind of creates that kind of upfront incentive to invest in resiliency and sustainability. In this case, it was a conservation program, both in-field and edge-field practices. And again, we learned a lot. I think, again, Heartland was an early adopter. That was our very first sustainability linked loan. So we also learned a ton. We loved, the tool for being a way to support our customers beyond relationship opportunities. This is one that actually created economics for a borrower, which is fantastic. And then they were able to reinvest those resources into, people and programs and awareness of their customers, which are those producers in Iowa.
Yeah, I think, Katie, this is like one of the things that I've been most excited about with CoBank and GOF and the partnership with Iowa. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it from like the most basic level, the co-op has an operational line of credit. They agree upon, indicators, key performance indicators, cover crops, education, no-till, things like that. Mm-hmm. If they meet that, they get a reduction on their loan. And then they're taking that and reinvesting it into conservation. Right. So their members are getting the assistance that's needed. And as member owners, they're getting the reduction in their interest rate, which impacts their bottom line. Mm-hmm. And so when you start to look at that, it starts to become a powerful tool and changing the way. It's now not just a grant, mm-hmm. right, where you have to make these deliverables. It's now part of how you do business. How do you see that change moving forward in financing? I think we've talked a lot this last day about how financing can be a powerful change. How do you see that moving forward?
Yeah, well, something that we haven't talked about is the partnerships there. So, I mean, I met you all just under a year ago, and we did some fantastic things on the Heartland job. We provided the financing. You provided some additional forms in the form of a grant. We had Environmental Defense Fund there to help establish those key KPIs, mm-hmm. making sure there are meaningful and measurable targets for the organization. But that's something that provided some economics. Again, I'm really proud of it. It's not to diminish the relationship or the tool, but I think there's more opportunities out there. So we have been exploring and using this as a base case of what we can do. And again, as I mentioned, the public sector is retrenching a little bit, and we still need literally trillions of dollars of investment over the globe in the next multiple years or dozens of years. And this isn't going to go away. This is an area that's going to require continued investment. So that's going to be a lot to ask for from financial institutions, because mm-hmm. it's not going to all be in the form of a grant. So we're looking at these blended financing solutions, which I'm super excited about. This is where potentially we could take some patient capital and combine it with our traditional financing, and that patient capital, catalytic capital, could be could absorb a potential loss in the event mm-hmm. of a default. And that for a bank, that provides us the ability to change our risk ratings and therefore create even more economics for borrowers. So again, it's going to take public, private, philanthropy collaborations to really make this happen. But I do believe there's a lot of opportunity. So so we have the SLL, the Sustainability Linked Loan. We actually have done green loans, and the difference between those two is the green loan is for use of proceeds. The Sustainability Linked Loan is for general corporate purposes. They can use that money for anything that they need to run their operations. But the blended financing that has some SLL, KPIs, it's a combination of both, but with, again, patient catalytic capital, it could generate multiples of the economics that we did with our first SLL. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So very exciting, very exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And you mentioned a word that we're all thinking about in the day and age of climate change, and that is risk. How do you, as a lending institution, how do you see conservation of value as a value, not just from, this ethereal or hypothetical, but how is it used to literally de-risk the assets that you are helping to support through your lending?
Yeah, I use this word a lot. A resilient borrower is a good borrower. We used to use the word ESG. ESG is kind of taken a negative tone to it, but I believe we've been underwriting sustainability or ESG for a very long time. You think about if you're a good steward for your inputs, that creates efficiencies in how you run your business. If you're well governed, that's positive for a bank as well. So as you roll all that up, we're not implicit. We're not looking at ESG and when we're doing our underwriting, but honestly, since the beginning of time, I think banks have looked at those qualities. It does show up in your financials over a long period of time. So therefore, our more resilient, climate sensitive, well-governed organizations are getting better interest rates today. So this is it has been going on. We're just now being asked to do it in a more qualitative or quantitative way, and also measure it, and then have it show up in how you underwrite your lending.
Yeah, that's a big topic for me. A career-changing topic, in every way, it changes how we do conservation. And if I were to start that story, I'd go back to the 1930s in Iowa, right? We're going to start way back. Kids. Dust bowls happening. There's soil blowing off, blowing across Iowa. And at that time, the government was like, wow, we got to figure out how to get farmers to do conservation. And they developed this idea of cost share, right? Where they're going to actually split the cost to get farmers to do conservation on their fields. And from that, conservation on private land started as we know it. And for the next almost 100 years, we did this idea of cost share, where you get a farmer to build something in their field. They meet certain program requirements, and you split the cost with them. And it's like a win-win. The environment wins, and the landowner, the farmer, wins because they get their farms get some improvement.
Yeah.
Fast forward to my first few years of doing conservation, and one of my watersheds, they were like, John, we want you to install saturated buffers and bioreactors to treat tile outlets. And I was like, cool, yep, I'm going to do that. And in fact, we're going to offer 100% cost. We're actually going to cover all the costs. I was like, easy sell,
Amazing.
Right? And so I was going to farmers, and I was like, hey, we'd like to install these things that treat your tile outlets. And those farmers were looking at me, they're like, I don't even know what a saturated buffer is. So like, oh, all right. So we get them up to speed on how these things worked. And we're like, all right. And we'll actually fund the whole practice because it's so good for water quality. And they're like, okay. And they're like, they give us the go-ahead. And unfortunately, it would take us about a year to do a design. And the whole time, they're like, wow, the government's really slow. And we're like, yeah, we're trying. And we're like, all right, we got your designs. And now we need you to go hire a contractor. Oh, and then if you could just front the money, make $5,000. And then when you're done, we'll reimburse you the costs. Yeah. And what I kept finding was it was just taking, like, a lot of people wouldn't make it through that process, right? Like, folks are really busy. That's kind of what kept sticking into my mind. And some other folks we were working with all came to the same realization. And that's where we had this idea of, some folks got together like, what if we actually batched projects together? What if we installed 10 at a time, or maybe even 20? What if we, instead of making them hire the contractor, we hired one contractor and we made it more like a public improvement, like how we build roads, let's build conservation. And so that's where this idea of grouping things together, taking some of the pressures off the landowners. So now the new pitch is we target the fields we want to work in where you have a high chance. We group installs, we group designs, and we take care of the money. And we just take all those pressures off farmers and landowners. And lo and behold, that first year we had a goal of doing 20, and which we thought was a big deal because the previous 6 years we'd installed 5.
Can you say that one more time?
So in our watershed, where our goal is to treat 100, we've been trying for 6 years, and unfortunately, we only installed 5. Now, I do remember the year we installed 2, and I was like, oh, we got this now.
We're cooking with
things are rolling. So we did this new model, right, where we grouped sites, we targeted them, and we, that first year, installed 52.
Wow.
And for us, it was really eye-opening because everybody that we targeted, and for years we were told, honestly, we were taught not to target people because this idea of the government targeting your land was like a thing not to do. But what we kept hearing was people were like, wow, they appreciated, they're like, you guys actually took the time to do your homework before you came to me. And I'm like, yeah. And we think we have a great shot. And our goal is we want to do all the conservation. We want to have to never come back again. Let's just do it all at once. And we think we can lower prices. And lo and behold, every person we went to, they said yes. Wow. And now you fast forward a couple years, and it's being done in 13 counties in Iowa, and I believe 4 states as of today. And we've installed ourselves about 200 structures in the last 3 or 4 years.
As far as trends go, I think the thing that I'm starting to see more than anything is this, especially in Iowa, there is this buildup of energy around certain individuals who are movers and shakers in the conservation space. I'm a mover and shaker, certainly. I make people laugh and I swear a lot. So that alone has made me a popular public speaker. But there are other people within agencies and county and state levels who are just movers and shakers. And I think when Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy specifically was released like 15 years ago, you didn't have the people, the intellectual scaffolding, if you will, in place yet. And it's taken the last decade to get all the right people on the chessboard who need to be where they are within the agencies that they're in. And I would rattle off some names. Me in Heartland Co-op, John Swanson with Polk County, Susan Kozak and these other amazing people, Mike Naig, obviously, within Iowa Department of Agriculture, you guys with Great Outdoors Foundation, right? There's all of these pieces on the chessboard that are there now that were not there 15 years ago. And there's this energy around what we're all doing that for me is really exciting. And when I hear the criticism sometimes from people who are like, well, it's been over a decade and nothing has changed from the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. I'm like, cool. We literally just spent a decade building the scaffold around the house. Now just shut up and let us paint it.
Right.
Let us paint now, because I promise you in another 10 years, you're going to see differences. The amount, the rate of change of the types of practices that have been getting implemented over the last 5 years alone is mind-blowing, and people aren't seeing it because I think IDALS specifically is being too, they're being too modest. IDALS, you're being too modest. You guys need to start owning this. Anyway, I hope they see this.
We'll send them that quote specifically.
Send it to Mike Naig.
I will. Don't worry.
But people aren't hearing about it. But anyway, I work in the space. And so the trend that I'm seeing is there's this energy when John Swanson or I or you guys or somebody, who works on the batch and build team at Iowa Department of Ag, for example, Tanner Pulse or Emma Lynn, or just these people who are now working in the space, or Shane with the wetland team, they walk into a room and it's like people start to know who they are, and you can see them go, oh, so-and-so's here. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I want to go talk to them about XYZ, or I saw this thing happening and I wonder if it was them who worked on it. So there's this energy that's building. Now, the second part of your question, can you say it for me again?
What has surprised you the most?
What has surprised me? Thank you. What has surprised me is that there are these movers and shakers, and they are not where you think they would be. So when I started, I will tell you, I had a very different, when I was in graduate school, I did a research project with, my graduate degree was on biofuels for bioenergy. So co-firing coal with switchgrass or miscanthus. And I looked at the nutrient profile of these as feedstocks. Anyway, super boring. I published a manuscript. If you want to read it, it'll put you to sleep in 2 pages. Not even 2 paragraphs. You'll be out like a light. You're welcome. But anyways, so, but what's funny about that is part of my research I did in partnership with the USDA and some USDA ARS researchers, and some NRCS folks were also a part of that research. And what fascinates me is a decade later, I took on this role at Heartland, and I actually communicated with some of the same people, but I had gotten married in the interim, so they didn't know what my new last name was. And it was amazing how different I was treated at Heartland Co-op than when I had been at Iowa State University. And there is this sort of lassitude or resistance to change in the traditional agencies that offered conservation services that has shocked me in the last 5 years. And then at the same time, I have seen these people coming out of agencies where I'm like, wait, you care about this? I mean, I guess they probably think the same thing about me. So I can only assume that people are like, this Ruth person, you work for Heartland? I get that question a lot. You actually work for Heartland Co-op? Like Heartland Co-op. So I'm assuming when I see these people who are doing amazing things and they're in these weird agencies or these weird organizations, and I'm just like, this is awesome. Let's go get stuff done. Heck yeah. Let's just take over the world of conservation, man. Let's take them down one wetland at a time, one field of cover crops at a time. And it's super exciting, but they're in places that you don't anticipate them being. So I guess I'll just end this by saying I have learned to set aside my preconceived notions. The agencies that I thought would be champions for conservation have, in many instances, not been. And the organizations and agencies that I would have never anticipated being champions have been. So now I'm just kind of don't care. Gloves are off. If you want to get stuff done, you want to get conservation in the ground, let's play ball.
Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Again, some of the best of the best working in the field, sometimes quite literally advancing conservation and agriculture. Remember, all of these guests have full-length episodes, so we'd encourage you to go back and listen to those from our 2025 season. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening, and share this episode with a friend. We know that oftentimes it's easy to form opinions or perspectives from a distance. And what I love about these conversations is it gives you an up close and personal insight into the folks who are working toward progress. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.